Good evening. Tonight's show is about the Gothic novel Dracula. Now, Dracula is not just a Gothic novel, it also falls into the category of sensation novels, just like Woman in White we talked about last time. Bram Stoker was an Irishman, and the booklet came out in 1897, so still technically we're in the Victorian era. Just like The Woman in White, the story is told through letters, journals, news reports, things like that. And even one character records his story on record player, which is kind of new at the time. There's numerous similarities with The Woman in White. Dracula might be based on a Transylvanian prince from the Middle Ages named Vlad the Impaler. If you want to see what he was up to, you can look him up. It's pretty grisly. Most modern vampire lore is everything to Buffy Vampire Slayer. All those things are all based on the persona that was Bram Stoker developed around his Dracula. So here are the characters. The first one on the scene is a handsome, noble young man named Jonathan Harker. He's a freshly minted lawyer. And he is engaged by his law firm to travel to Transylvania. He is engaged to Minna Murray, a very smart young woman. And she is best friends with a young woman named Lucy Westenra, who is very young, sweet, and naive. And if this sounds familiar, this is another similarity with The Woman in White, which had a very intelligent, assertive woman, and her sister Laura, who is very sweet and naive and gentle. And this is the case we have here, Minna being the smart, assertive one, and Lucy being the kind of a little fading flower type. Hanging around Lucy and Minna is a gaggle of noble, handsome young men who are practically indistinguishable from each other, and they're all in love with Lucy. One of them is Dr. John Seward. He runs an insane asylum. And one notable inmate of his is Renfield, a man named Renfield, who eats insects and has some strange connection with Dracula. Dr. Seward's old Dutch professor is Abraham Van Helsing, who is an expert in all manner of things arcane, mysterious, weird, and occult. And then there's Dracula himself, the owner of a creepy old castle in Transylvania in the Carpathian Mountains, which is now in modern-day Romania. So the plot is pretty well known by all of us. Lawyer Jonathan Harkins is sent to Transylvania to finalize a real estate deal with Count Dracula, who wants to live in London. And you might wonder why that is. Well, he's a very old man, and it develops as the story progresses that he lives off the blood of others. We know this about vampires. We're not surprised when we discover this. But he's pretty much run through all the local people, and he's starting to suffer. He's starting to become old and feeble, and he needs a big population of people. He thinks London would be just the place for him to rejuvenate himself. So as Jonathan is traveling to Transylvania, as closer he gets, the more nervous the people he meets on the road, the innkeepers, the drivers of the wagons and those things, they're all like, no, don't go there. And they cross themselves, and they give him crucifixes, and they tell him, please don't go there. This is the eve of St. George. It's Walpurgis night. All manner of evil is going to be out and about. And Jonathan is not a big believer in the supernatural. He thinks this is all foolish lore. And when he's given a crucifix, he has to comment that he is an Anglican and he does not believe in these things. It's idolatry, but he takes it anyway. Later on, he's glad he did. He stops at several inns where, for dinner, in both places, it's chicken paprikash, which happens to be my favorite dish. But it bothers him. Being English, he's not used to such spicy food, apparently. And all night in both ends, he had nightmares and could hear a dog howling outside his window. We can imagine who that dog probably was. At Dracula's castle, he realizes that something is dreadfully amiss with the Count. You know, all the usual tropes. He can't be seen in a mirror, so he sneaks up on Jonathan, who's shaving himself, and doesn't show up in the mirror, and he smashes the mirror. He's got hairy hands, pointy teeth. And it seems to be the only person in the castle besides Jonathan. Actually, Jonathan's the only person in the castle who's actually alive. There are other people in the castle, too. There's Dracula's, I guess you could call them wives, these three really spooky women who try to seduce Jonathan, and Dracula intervenes, and I won't say what he does to calm them down. It's awful. So very soon, Jonathan realizes that he is a prisoner at the castle and that Dracula has some sinister plans for him. And he's allowed to wander around the castle, though, and there's some doors that are locked. You know, he can't go everywhere, but he makes his way down to the basement, and there's a coffin. And against all common sense, he decides to open it up. Now, would you do that? I would not do that. If I was in the basement of a scary castle with all kinds of weird things going on, like ghostly women and all that, I would not open up the coffin. But he did. And there's Dracula. And he smacks him with a shovel, with a gash in his head, but he lost his nerve, because he's pretty unnerved by this time, and runs up to his room. And then comes one of the scariest things I've ever read in literature. His room is high up, and he's looking out the window, and there's a there's a river down below, but very, very, very far below. The castle's on a cliff. And he's looking down, thinking there's no way he could survive a jump. And he looks off a little bit to the left, and there's another window, and it opens up, and a head pops out. Oh, it's Dracula. What's he doing? Well, he begins to crawl down the side of the castle head first, like a lizard. And the first time I read that, I think that was the scariest thing I've ever read. You know, we all know the story now. We're not shocked by it. I've watched quite a few movies to prepare for the show, and none of that scares me anymore. But the first time I read that, I was scared. So he knows his days are numbered, and he does attempt to go out his own window. And the next time we see dear Jonathan Harker, he is a patient in a hospital in Budapest. Apparently, somehow landed in the river and survived, and was found by a local. And he's lost his memory completely, but he didn't lose his journal. He had kept a journal the whole time he was there, and he had very detailed description of what was happening to him, even the very embarrassing parts. This becomes important later. Now, so he's in Budapest. Now, Dracula takes a ship to London, to England anyway, and he takes with him quite a few boxes of good old Romanian, Transylvanian dirt, which he can sleep in at night. That's what it's for. Now, news makes it to Minna back in England that Jonathan is alive. He had been missing for a long time. And she goes and gets him, and eventually all the cast of characters wind up in London. Now, meanwhile, while Jonathan is in a kind of a mentally ill state in Budapest before Minna can come get him, Dracula does get to England, a different little city, Whitby, on a ship called the Demeter, Russian ship, and he kills everybody on board with his thirst for blood. And so the ship kind of runs up onto the town, onto the dock, and they go on. They say there's nobody left, even the captain is like tied to the wheel. But a large dog runs off. So anyway, that's how Dracula got to England, by this ship, and sustained himself with the crewmen. Now they're all in London, and now time to talk a little about Lucy, poor little Lucy. Lucy starts walking in her sleep and starting acting very strangely, and Minna is very concerned about her. And one night she was walking and she followed her off to a cemetery, no surprise there, and saw in the moonlight that there was like a man kind of attaching himself to her neck. She scared him away. And Lucy declined at a pretty rapid rate after that. Seemed like she had invited Dracula into the window of her room. And that's one of the other tropes, if you watch Buffy Vampire Slayer, you know that vampires cannot come into your house unless they're invited. So apparently in her naivety and simplicity, she invited him in. Well, Van Helsing's on the scene, and he's getting her, wrapping her up with garlic flowers and putting crucifixes around. So this is an interesting thing. This story is not what you'd say, the characters are not what you'd say outstanding Christian people. But the one thing that Dracula cannot tolerate is the sign of the cross. Either if you make it, Catholic or Orthodox style, didn't seem to matter, or you go like that with your crucifix, that is more than Dracula can bear. Because Dracula is really a Christian story. It's good versus evil, the forces of Satan versus the forces of good. Well, Lucy dies. We know she's going to. She had a lot of transfusions with the 4 noble men, but it wasn't good enough, and she dies. And Van Helsing is concerned that she died. Everybody else sad, but he's not sad. He's sad and concerned. So she's buried, and right away there starts being some disturbance in the neighborhood of the cemetery. Little children are starting to encounter a beautiful woman who allures them in, and they call her the Bloofer Lady. And the children seem unusually pale after spending an hour with the Bloofer Lady. So Van Helsing, she became a vampire. That's what he thought was going to happen, and it did happen. So he and the noble men, now Jonathan's back in town. He's healthy again. So he's joined the group of noble young men. And they went to her crypt and stake in the heart, beheaded. And she smiles just as she dies, because she's now relieved from the horrible curse, and presumably went up to heaven. Kind of a nice little touch there. So now our Scooby Gang, the only thing left for them to do is catch Dracula. They know that Dracula from Transylvania is now here in London and terrorizing the neighborhood, but now he's put his sights on Mina. I saw some movies for this. One of them suggested that Mina looked to Dracula. He thought Mina was his wife of 500 years ago, who was tragically killed, and he thought it was her reincarnated. So he was attracted to Mina because he thought it was his long departed wife. That's a nice touch, because I can't think of any other reason why he would be attracted to Mina particularly. London's full of people. Now, a thing about this that's kind of interesting is after all they have gone through with Lucy, every day, all right, she's had this transfusion, she's okay now. And we're just going to keep an eye on her at night. We're going to cover her up with garlic. We're going to bolt the window. We're going to have one of the handsome young men stay in the room with her. But somehow something always went wrong, and she got bit again, and she got paler and paler, and she finally dies. So this is the pattern. Well, Mina starts exhibiting the exact same manifestations. She's getting paler and paler, and seems a little reluctant to kill Dracula. And it takes them forever to realize that the same thing is happening. It took, she really got pretty far into the soup before they actually realized it was the same thing all over again. I was just yelling, come on, guys, you know what's going on. But no. Now, so the problem isn't just that Dracula is in town. The problem is that he's got all these boxes, big boxes, coffin-sized boxes that he brought with him on the ship. A good number of them. He's got them distributed all around London, so he always has like a foothold, like a safe house. He's bought all these crummy old houses up and has these boxes of Transylvanian dirt stashed away so he can always have a place to retire after he's done his dastardly deeds. So the Scooby Gang goes around, finds them all, do some detective work, and they pour holy water on them all. And I think they even say some prayers over them, I don't know. And only one's left. And Dracula now realizes his goose is cooked, that they're on to him, and he wants to get back to Transylvania. So he gets into the one remaining box, and somebody puts, he's got hirelings, Renfield being one of the hirelings. And he puts the box on the ship and starts heading back to Transylvania. And then it's transferred onto like a cart driven by gypsies, and it's on its way. And with the Scooby Gang in hot pursuit, Van Helsing, Mina, and all the young men, they're all chasing. So now nobody's left in London except Renfield, and now all the rest are just big chase across Central Europe, trying to catch him before dark, because Mina looks like she's about to die, and if she dies while Dracula is still alive, she will become a vampire. And everybody loves Mina. They don't want that to happen. And so through some exciting things, they do catch Dracula just before the sun goes down, just before he gets into his castle. And it's more, and he goes, and Mina is back to her normal self. And that's the story of Dracula. Pretty exciting. So this story has, I said, some Christian-based things to it. It seems like Dracula can only be killed by Christian symbolism, but it has a lot of folklore too, like the garlic and those kind of things. Now he gets back to Castle Dracula, and just like I said, they kill him, and then they burn his body. Now, the thing about this book is, this is unfortunately true about many books. They always talk about the muddy middle of books. So the book starts out fantastically scary, just totally like, it is, when I read it, I didn't know the whole Dracula story. I just, Count Dracula from Sesame Street. That was all really about what I knew about it. But when I read the story, so everything that happened, I was surprised and shocked. I didn't have a real a background in my mind of the whole Dracula story. And so the first few chapters are really pretty scary. And I don't even know if Jonathan's going to escape. And the last few chapters are pretty good too. The big chase across Central Europe, all our gang going after it, and will they catch him on time? Will they be able to stake him before the sun sets, so that Mina can recover? That was exciting too. But in the middle, there is this really, it's the fall of Van Helsing. He just talks and talks and talks and talks. Just paragraph after paragraph of just blather, really. Now, he knows a lot. He right away realizes what's going on, and he doesn't tell anybody what's really going on. Even his buddy, Dr. Seward, who runs the insane asylum, who is a professional man just like him, who could surely bear hearing the horrible truth about Dracula, but he doesn't. He waits till almost the end to tell the whole story and let these guys realize what they're up against. And he talks and talks and talks, and kind of makes the book a little tedious. But on the whole, it's a pretty exciting book. Now the movies, of which I have watched about 5. And well, I'll give them to you in the order that they were made. So a famous one would be Nosferatu, which means undead. A Symphony of Horror was the subtitle. And it was a German movie made in 1922. And it was a silent film with Max Schreck as Count Orlok. Now, everybody in this silent film have a different name, and that is because they didn't have the copyright to this movie at all. And Mrs. Stoker, Bram's wife, widow, was very upset that they were going to make a movie and it didn't look like she was going to get any kind of, entitlements out of it. And so they just changed everybody's name, and I guess that was good enough for back then. Now, this is interesting. Most of the Dracula movies, Dracula is fairly good-looking man, kind of, creepy, of course, but a good-looking man and kind of aristocratic way. Not this one, Count Orlok. He looks like a goblin, like a ghoul, and he's got these 2 teeth like this that stick out in the front, and incisors. We're used to, and he's got. So I was thinking about that. Now, one thing that's always confused me about the Dracula stories is how everybody got these 2 little things, for just not even an inch apart, with the teeth, like 2 or 3 inches apart. How did that work? I couldn't figure that out. Well, this made sense. So there it goes. So Jonathan goes, and while he's there in the castle, his wife, back in Germany, this is a German movie, everything else takes place in Germany, begins to suffer the influence of Dracula. Because Jonathan Harker, he's not called Jonathan Harker, he's called Tom Hutter in this movie. He had a little miniature painting of his wife, and Dracula fell in love with it, and he wanted to come to Germany to get this woman. And so he's kind of somehow managing to influence her across the hundreds of miles between Romania and Germany. So Cutter realizes what's going on, so he rushes home after he realizes what Dracula is. Dracula takes a ship. Count Orlok takes a ship. Now, this movie focuses on something a little different. It focuses on the bubonic plague. So when the ship lands, all these rats come off, and they're all carriers of the plague. And in this little town where the main characters are from, everybody starts dying of the plague. And this one, there's only one woman, his wife Ellen. There's no Mina, there's no Lucy. There's just that. There's no Van Helsing or anything like that I could determine. She decided, so she's being bothered by Dracula. He's coming in, he's biting her with his 2 little weird teeth. She got her hands on this book about vampires, and she read in this book that if she could distract Count Orlok long enough so that he would be out when the sun hit him, he would die. So she decided to sacrifice herself. She invited him in and kind of dazzled him with her amorous expressions on her face. Remember, this is silent. And he stayed, and light in the window hit him, and he turns into dust, and she dies too. Now, doesn't this sound familiar? This is what happened in The Hobbit. This is what happened when Frodo's encountering the trolls, and they're going to eat the dwarves, and so he keeps them busy talking about the best way to cook a dwarf. Shall we fry them? Shall we skin them? And he keeps talking and talking and talking until Gandalf shows up, splits a rock, and the morning light hits the trolls and turns them to stone. So this is the same thing. There's nothing new in the world. All right, so that is the 1922 German silent film Dracula. Now, here comes one that everybody knows about, and this would be Dracula in 1931. This is an American black and white movie, and Bela Lugosi is Dracula. And he doesn't do a lot of talking. He just has this stare And they do a little special effects that they were able to do at the time, and I never saw a more menacing looking person. He's not exactly handsome, but he's dapper, you know. And in this story, Renfield visits Transylvania and sees all the things that one would notice at that castle, and this explains why he went insane. And so Minna is bitten by Dracula and seems to fall in love with him. And the ending is a little confusing, but Dracula does get the stake in the heart at Carfax. That's the name of the house he bought in London, which just coincidentally happens to be right next to the insane asylum. So the best part of this one, I mean, the plot is nothing to get too excited about. The acting is not too exciting either, but Bela Lugosi is a sight to behold. He's got these glowing eyes, and in my opinion, he's the best Dracula. So that was that one. Now there's the 1958 Dracula. It's a British with Christopher Lee. And this one, Jonathan Harker is a vampire hunter. He's a librarian, and he wants to go to Transylvania to engage Dracula and kill him. Well, he didn't have any luck with that because you just wanted to stop walking to Castle Dracula and kill him. This one's a little jumbled because all the characters they say have similar names as the book, but they have different roles to play, and it is a little confusing. And he's finally killed when Van Helsing is fighting Dracula, and he happens to get two candlesticks and makes a cross shape, and Dracula crumbles. Now, Christopher Lee looks pretty good, I must say. You know, I'm only familiar with him as Saruman in The Lord of the Rings, but he makes a pretty good Dracula, I must say. And also, an interesting thing about this one, this is one of the few of the movies I saw where Dracula starts out, Christopher Lee starts out looking quite elderly, and as he sustains himself on all the people he encounters, he gets younger and younger, and towards the end he looks quite young. And pretty cool. That's the main thing about it, and it'd be nice if all the rest of them did that. Now, this next one, number 4, 1992, Bram Stoker's Dracula, an American film, but directed by Francis Ford Coppola, with Gary Oldman playing Dracula. The movie also has Winona Ryder playing Mina, and Keanu Reeves plays Jonathan Harker. And apparently his performance was considered rather lackluster. So this one, Dracula's given a tragic backstory involving his wife's suicide. Remember I mentioned earlier that it could be that he liked Mina because he thought she was a reincarnation of his wife. And so Mina believes that I just said that. So the most notable thing about this version is the Count's crazy hairdo. He has this. He's dressed in like a Byzantine kind of a robe in Transylvania, and he's got a poofy hair that goes like this, and then in the back he has this big, long, probably 500-year-old pigtail, and not. This is not very good. One's not very good. But of course, online, everybody thinks it's the best one because it has a lot of, let's just euphemistically say, romance. The last one was Dracula, a BBC TV series from 2020. Harker escapes the castle and wakes up in a convent where he is interrogated by a very quirky nun whose last name is Van Helsing. So the storyline has very little resemblance to the book, and I just watched the first few episodes. So none of these movies are really very good, in my opinion. They suffer from the same problem as the book. Very exciting, very gripping, very chilling in the very beginning. And a long period in the middle where not much happens, just conversation, and where people are seemingly ignoring obvious things. And then some excitement at the end where the vampire is killed, although sometimes it's very muddled. So I don't ever want to watch another Dracula movie. I have seen enough to last me a lifetime. I'm done with Dracula, to tell you the truth. I think this is about the third time I've read this book, maybe second time, maybe, but at least the second time. And I've had enough of Dracula to last me a lifetime, I think. I'm gonna rate these things. I'm gonna give the book an 8. A couple exciting chapters is not enough to make it a great book. And the movies, the one with Bela Lugosi, I will give it a 6 because Bela Lugosi, and the Christopher Lee one too. They look very menacing and very good. The other ones, I don't think so. The modern one, the Francis Ford Coppola one, I give it a 2. And the BBC TV series, I might give it a 5 because the actress that plays the quirky nun really does a good job. So that is Dracula. And I'm going to read something a little more uplifting and wholesome for my next book. I'm not sure what it is exactly. I don't know, does this happen to you? Do you want to read a book, you know it's going to be good, and you just can't get into it. So you just set it down for a while and find something else. And I'm kind of in the setting it down now and looking for something else. But I have a big stack of books to read, so we'll get through them all. So that's all for tonight. Thank you for listening, and go find something good to read. Thank you.